Hi, everyone. I'm Doug Black, editor-in-chief at Inside HPC. And today we're talking with three industry thought leaders about next week's hybrid SC21 conference, looking at some of the expected developments, conference sessions and keynotes, other activities that they think could be noteworthy. We have with us Katie Antypas. She is Division Deputy Data Department Head at the U.S. Department of Energy's National Energy Research Scientific Computing Center, also known as NERSC. At lower left, we have Earl Joseph. He is CEO of industry analyst firm Hyperion Research. And at lower right, we have the co-founder and CEO of Intersect 360 Research, Addison Snell. So welcome to you all.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So Katie, let's start with you. When you look through the conference agenda, what talks and panels did you identify that you're most excited to take a look at?
Well, there was a lot this year. So, I was scrolling through my iPad last night, looking at the agenda, and started writing things down. And I was still on Tuesday by the time I came to the end of my sheet. But I guess one that stood out for me was it was a panel, and it's Beyond the Hype. Is there a typical AI ML storage workload? And this kind of struck me because we're running large AI models in commercial clouds, of course, and we run them at HPC systems. But if you look at the basic architecture differences between commercial clouds and HPC, one obvious difference is our storage architectures. Yet we're all running these big, huge training models and workloads. So I'm very interested in how the experts on that panel will discuss that. Another panel, again, it's on Tuesday. I think Tuesday is a big day. I saw HPC's Growing Sustainability Challenge. And I think that's something that we're all facing, is just how much power and energy that these systems are using, and how we can continue to make the scientific advances that we need to, while reducing the power usage of these systems. So those were a couple of panels just on Tuesday. I'm sure we'll get to later in the week in this discussion.
Yeah, I've been learning more about the added complexities of HPC storage, high performance storage, when you add in the AI component. It just adds a whole new multitude of factors to account for. So that's interesting. Addison, how about you? Are there keynote sessions at this hybrid? And you're interested in this notion of a hybrid supercomputing conference.
I am, and of course we always want to see the keynotes. I love the panels that Katie pulled out, and hopefully I'll get a chance to catch them. We'll be busy on site. We definitely want to capture the student cluster competition while we're there. We're always interested in that, and anyone who will be there on site in St. Louis, we'd love to have it. Our own welcome reception on Monday afternoon from 3 to 5 at a restaurant called BLT's, just a block south of the convention center. But that really highlights, you were mentioning hybrid. I think it's going to be interesting to see how we pull off having a hybrid event. We're used to the in-person events, then we did a fully virtual one. I think hybrid might present what ultimately becomes the biggest challenge for this. Some of the big things, I think, like the keynote, will be able to pull off as a hybrid event. The in-person people will get it, the online people will get it. I'm a little worried that it winds up being two separate conferences. There's the in-person people having one conference and the online people having another conference. And we just haven't seen this yet. So I guess we'll find out how it goes.
Interesting thought. Yeah, I mean, if you're at the conference, would you then go to watch a virtual event? We'll see. And how about you, Earl? Where do you plan to spend some of your time next week?
Well, I'm always excited about supercomputing because I learned so much at the show. Getting together with friends and learning what new people are up to and new companies are always great. In particular, I'm interested in learning a lot about quantum computing. There's some good talks on that. Some of the BOFs look very interesting as far as what DoD is doing and the National Science Foundation. So those two in particular. Also, the AI topic. We're trying to have a better understanding of what the real use cases are, not just the experiments, but as it moves into the more mainstream. And so those are a couple of the top ones that we're looking for. But we're also very interested in the diversity topic because from our perspective, diversity is an issue. I frankly thought it was going to be solved. You know, if you had asked me 20 years ago, by now would it have been solved? I would have said absolutely yes. And I have to tell you, I think we've stepped backwards compared to 20 years ago. So I'm hoping to learn a lot more on that topic too. But as Addison was mentioning, as a group, we're really uncertain about how the hybrid's going to work out. Because if when we went through the agenda and looked at everything, there are parts of the agenda that are online only. So we're wondering if while we're there, does that mean we spend 2 hours in a corner room somewhere with our laptops open to watch the online only version and then do the face-to-face ones? So to me, it's fascinating because I always like trying new experiences. I'm looking forward to it next week.
Okay, Katie, back to you. I know you had some thoughts about, speaking of hybrid, and I believe you'll be offsite. Some of the your biggest disappointments with events that you'll be missing.
Well, I love going to SC every year, and we didn't get travel approval to go this year, but hopefully next year. So I'll be joining online. I'm definitely going to miss the networking. I think the student cluster competition is so great to go to and just see all those students hustling together to build those systems. And I really like the BOFs, right? The in-person BOFs where you can talk to people casually. And I think that's where a lot of the new ideas and innovation comes from is not always, one lecture, but when you actually, get people chatting, and that ultimately usually leads to people after the BOF walking outside to get, some dinner. And so I'm definitely going to miss that. But I'll be there online, and we'll hope to see more people next year.
Yeah, hopefully this is the last hybrid virtual of anything. So now, Addison, I know you released some new industry findings the other day. Are there trends and developments you identified in your research that you'll be looking into next week?
We did, yeah. Thanks, Doug. We did our pre-SC21 market update. We released some overview findings from our most recent software study. I always love talking about things beyond just the core computing itself. Katie mentioned that panel on storage. That's hitting me right in my sweet spot. I love talking about high performance storage. There's a lot going on in software. That's going to really be the interesting ecosystem topic right now, especially as we've had the processing element wars really heating up with Intel and AMD and NVIDIA and other options. How that software ecosystem coalesces is really key to the conversation. Some of the insights that we gave in that webinar about the 2021 market forecast and the shortfall relative to previous expectations. Those are going to be things, I love what Earl said about trying to learn there. And we'll have questions about supply chain and whether it's affecting people's deliveries in the second half of the year, and whether or not people's business is getting back up to speed with the kind of lingering COVID economy that we've had in some vertical markets. So we're always there to learn, as Earl said, and we'll gather what information we can. But these are complicated times we live in. And then finally, I'm glad that Katie also mentioned student cluster, and Earl talked about diversity. The other thing we brought up in our webinar is that after SC, we'll have our own student cluster competition following up work that's been done previously by Dan Olds, who's our new Chief Research Officer since earlier this year, continuing his Winter Classic Invitational Student Cluster Competition. That is going to be specifically targeting HBCUs and other minority serving institutions, because we need to be addressing this diversity topic in HPC, as Earl was talking about. I couldn't agree more, and would love to do what we can to help that focus.
Okay, and Earl, obviously Hyperion will give its market update, I believe, Monday morning.
That's correct. That's Monday morning this time. Unfortunately, it's virtual. We will miss seeing everyone over breakfast, but we felt it wasn't wise to try to cram, so many people into a small room given the COVID situation.
Yeah. So from a high level, where do you see the strongest growth areas in HPC, and are users adopting clouds more quickly these days?
Well, these are exciting times. Addison mentioned this too. There are a lot of new growth areas, and some of these growth areas are not just in the 10% zone. They're growing, 20, 25% a year over the next 5 years. But AI, machine learning, deep learning, just tremendous growth there. But also, you just incorporating big data into traditional modeling and simulation. The cloud usage, and we mentioned a little, hinted this at ISC, but we'll be explaining more on Monday. We, in our surveys that we're doing on cloud computing, for the first time have seen a shift from on-prem budgets. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't a few sites that changed their budgets some over the last few years, but theirs was a substantial change in the last 9 months. And what I mean by that is people didn't just, stop doing things on premises. The number of sites, they actually delayed their purchases, or they bought smaller systems to use that budget in the cloud. And that's representing more than a third of the market right now, has making some kind of change to take advantage of cloud. And again, I'm not saying everyone's moving to the cloud by any means. It's just that the cloud presents us a new opportunity that a number of people are taking advantage of. Then the other big growth area that's just spiking our numbers for the next 4 years is all of exascale. The exascale machines, are representing a large portion of the market. We are struggling with our numbers right now. I'll be real upfront on that. Right now, there appears to be 2 exascale machines running in China. And what we don't know is have they been accepted? Because within our numbers and data structures, they have to be accepted before we put them in our numbers. And then secondly, were they sold to someone? And generally, these large machines, like NUTDT will build a machine for a city, and then there's a transaction. But if Wuxi built that machine only for Wuxi, then there's not a transaction. So those two things right now, we're just struggling with.
Any revenue? Earl is right on. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead, Earl.
Oh, no, that's right. I mean, the issue is if there's not revenue, then it doesn't go in our market numbers. And if it's not accepted, we don't put it in. And that was a surprise for us because 2020, last year, fundamentally, the market was down in our numbers 7 to 8%. But because Recon came in early with $1 billion, the market grew in our numbers by 1% last year. And we always struggle with that because you don't want to tell the whole world, hey, things are great, the market grew, but it grew because this one giant machine got accepted early. So part is, and Addison mentioned it too, for this year, from our tracking, the first half of this year is phenomenal. There was strong growth. But the second half of the year with the supply chain issues and everything else, really just the uncertainty is higher than we've seen in a very long period of time. But like I say, there's a lot of positive growth. I do need to also mention storage. Because of AI and big data requiring large amounts of data sets, because the traditional modeling simulation systems are getting larger, there's a tremendous demand for a lot more storage. And so that's an exciting area.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think the top 500 reveal this year will be, it might be a surprise to many of us. And so, I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully hearing more about the US supercomputers that are coming online as well.
Yeah, that, I was noting that at Exascale Day last month, it's different. It was different this year because it's the first year, at least in the US, we know of, that we expect there'll be an actual exascale system installed. So, and then if you look at the top 500 numbers, how confident are we that the findings, the results will be really comprehensive? That is, do they include China?
There have been other systems in the past that have not been included in top 500. So this is not a completely new situation for us. We've seen this before. Not all supercomputers go on top 500. And then with regard to US exascale, Earl was talking about the Chinese exascale systems. Those are partially a mystery right now. We don't know if we'll learn more. And then with Frontier, the first US system going, we know that they've been working on the installation, but there's no announcement as of yet on completion or acceptance and how much of that will happen, not only by supercomputing, but by the end of the year.
Well, I noted on a presentation last month from Doug Cote, the head of the Exascale Computing Project, his timeline moved placed the installation date on a calendar timeline. Looked like December 31st. I think he's giving himself as much leeway as possible for that. So it's pretty interesting. All right, folks. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. Hope you all have a great SC21. We've been joined by Katie Antypas of NERSC, Earl Joseph of Hyperion, and Addison Snell of Intersect 360 Research. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye.